I see Rick Ross is getting into it with Remy Ma. Remy Ma's about to put out a TUBI type movie on her network about Rick Ross, about a CEO turning into a rapper, the biggest boss. This is crazy work.
I'm energized, women lie, on God, numbers don't. Started talking about moves, that's right, when she got close.
It's Young, the one who do it. Numbers don't lie, that's the movement. Now let's get to it.
Rick Ross is having a temper tantrum because a movie was coming out on Remy Ma's network that was going to inadvertently expose this secret he's been lying about for years. And I don't know why he's been lying about this. Nobody knows. Rick Ross found out there was a movie coming out on Remy Ma's network called The Biggest Boss. And it was about this correctional officer who was like this dirty cop who turned rapper. Now, that story sounded really familiar because that's awfully similar to Rick Ross' life story. So Rick Ross sent a cease and desist to Remy Ma's network not to put out that particular movie. His reasoning for the cease and desist was he believes that the movie is infringing on his name and likeness, but honestly,
ain't that funny? So he's mad about her infringing on his name and likeness, but you stole your name and likeness. You gotta make this shit make sense, man. How you mad about that, bro? And you was actually a CEO turned a rapper. Now, while Remy Ma is doing this, it's beyond me. I don't understand. I seen one of the employees from No Jumper on there. I can't even remember his name, but yeah. So she must have been doing this for a minute because I believe he's locked up right now.
His reasoning for the cease and desist was he believes that the movie is infringing on his name and likeness. But honestly, I think the real reason is Rick Ross understands that if that movie comes out, if it takes steam, it's going to have a lot of questions about his past for the new generation or people who forgot about this story. Because Rick Ross has been pretty inconsistent when telling his story and has lied a lot about it.
This makes me wonder, though, is Remy Ma being petty since Papoose got beef with 50 Cent? Is she now siding with 50 Cent and going against his ops? You know what I mean? Rick Ross has been a long time op of his. So is she now targeting Rick Ross to try to get cool with 50 Cent? Are we going to see a dude, an actor that looks like Papoose in this movie? That would be crazy.
After Rick Ross sent the cease and desist, we find out that it's Remy Ma's network, but she's not really involved in the creation of the movies. It's kind of like you create a movie, you bring.
Doesn't this make you look crazier, though, admitting that this is your name and likeness? Talking about there's only one biggest boss? I wonder if those are actually his words.
Thinking to her, she give you like a deal for the movie. So the deal was created by third party. I think Brick Baby is also in the movie, if I'm not mistaken. So
Brick Baby, yeah, that's who I was talking about. That's the Adam 22 employee who's currently locked up right now, who was in the movie, which is crazy.
Article reads, Rick Ross, like he respects the hustle, but he's saying Remy Ma has gone too far. The biggest boss is going after Remy and her network for a movie that he says rips off his name and likeness and his music. Remy is apparently planning to release the film called Biggest Boss on her platform, the Remy Network. Now, according to a letter sent by Rick Ross attorneys and obtained by TMZ, Rick Ross is claiming the project features the unauthorized use of his music and trade name and demanding they halt the project from going forward.
Damn, so she threw the music in there too? So she took his name and threw the music in there? Remy Ma might be on some shit. She might be devious, man. Word.
Not only that, Rick Ross says it's confusing fans into thinking he has something to do with the movie, citing comments on social media. Now, a rep for Remy Ma tells TMZ, Remy was personally unaware of the concerns raised regarding Rick Ross and takes the matter seriously. She has maintained a personal and professional relationship with Rick Ross for more than 20 years and would never intentionally engage in any action that could harm him, his brand, or cause offense. Now, the film is apparently about a police officer who steals a drug dealer's life story and turns it into a rap career, very similar to Rick Ross' own, backstory, which I said earlier, of being a correctional officer turned rapper. Now, apparently, like Remy Ma's rep is saying that Remy Ma has reached out to Rick Ross directly And upon being made aware of the issue, the title was immediately removed from the platform. The Remy Network is now closely working with its partners to strengthen review processes and ensure that situations like this do not occur moving forward. But here's the problem, though. Remy Ma, she only removed the title. The movie itself is still going forward. Now, the title, The Biggest Boss, is not on it, but, I mean, anybody can use their brain and say, this sounds awfully similar to the Rick Ross life story. And I can almost guarantee Rick Ross is still not going to be happy. He's still going to do whatever he can to make sure that this project is halted completely because he doesn't want to get exposed. When Rick Ross was recently asked by the Full Send podcast, Rick Ross says that he only worked as a correctional officer for 4 months and he never really made it past the training stage. He never really made it to the prison.
By the way, too, you worked, I don't know if you want to talk about it all because
it's too easy.
This is your room.
I can't wait.
So were you a correctional officer at one point?
I was, yeah.
So going all the way back. When was that? How long ago?
Maybe when I was 20.
20 years old.
Yeah.
What kind of people were in there?
I didn't really get to make it to the prison because you got to go through training and all that, and I didn't last long.
Right.
I may have lasted 4 months.
Right.
Before they said,
yeah,
I was a little tardy.
What made you want to do that?
One of my big homies had just got in trouble, and a lot of things were going on, and he just suggested it.
You fuck with it or no?
No, I didn't. Anything you got to really do and you fucking...
I'm going to be honest with y'all, man. I don't really think none of this is going to hurt Rick Ross. Unfortunately, the era of hip-hop that he came in, that shit was okay. It was okay to fake it till you make it. And we had a lot of artists that were coming in doing the same thing. I'm not going to mention a whole lot of people. But think about Young Bird. He pretended to be a drug dealer to the point where he was rich. And he decided, I'm going to go and sell drugs because I know that's what rappers are supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? So you had a lot of people who were doing what they thought they needed to do to create an image around themselves to make it into the industry. And I'm sure even before Rick Ross, there was rappers that did that. I don't think there's anything wrong with working a job and then becoming a big time rapper. There's a lot of people that work jobs and then end up blowing up. I mean, some of your favorite rappers definitely work jobs. You know what I'm saying? The difference is they weren't saying that they were moving weight state to state, getting stuff from off the border, just living this lavish, crazy lifestyle like Pablo Escobar. You know what I mean? They weren't pretending to do that. Maybe some of them did have some lavish lies in their rhymes, but I don't think anybody lied as big as the Biggest Boss. He really faked it until he made it. He used the law of attraction. Now, I don't know what he's trying to protect at this point because nobody cares. I don't care. I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody's checking for it.
I'm going to be honest. Summer wouldn't have anything to worry about.
She wouldn't. Well, guess what? We keep it. We have a lot of fire alarms in our apartment, and we're very protective there. We make sure no fires happen in that apartment. So
what apartment?
You can take your ladder. You can take your ladder, and you can take it down Egypt's house and go over there.
No, because that was a nice apartment. What apartment building was it?
Everything Rick Ross just said right here was a lie. And how we know this? Well, 1090 Jake proved it. So Rick Ross said he was only a correctional officer for about 4 months. He never really went to no jails or prisons. Well, maybe county jail. But he never really went to prison or the big boy prison. He didn't really operate in his official duties as a correctional officer. He was never engaged in no snitching or police activity. But 1090 Jake did a video where he broke down, not only is the 4-month story not true, much of what Rick Ross has to say about his time as a correctional officer is not true.
In new news, back in 2008, pictures would be released of Ross in uniform, and he'd speak exclusively with all hip-hop stating, "My life is 100% real." These online hackers putting a picture of my face when I was a teenager in high school on other people's body. If this shit was real, don't you think they would have more specifics, like dates and everything? So a then 32-year-old Ross claimed the pic was photoshopped, his kingpin lifestyle was real, and there was no proof behind the CO allegations. Well, a media website by the name of the Smoking Gun would send in a public records request receiving 86 pages from the Florida Department of Corrections about Officer Ricky's short career. A photo of William Roberts, aka Rick Ross's state of Florida application, would state he received his diploma from Miami Carroll City High and went on to Albany State University to study criminal justice. On his supplementary application, he'd state his nickname was Big East and denied knowing anyone in prison, along with never working in prison or in law enforcement. Now, with every new recruit, the Department of Corrections wants to know how willing you are to complete your correctional duty.
Damn. 1090 Jake, he got all the information. This is crazy, man. This day and age is different. If these niggas was around when Rick Ross came out, it'd be bad for him.
Etc. He'd also state he's willing to shoot an inmate who's attempting to escape, body search a male or female inmate, and write an incident report. In 1995, Ross would take an oath of loyalty to support the Constitution and would receive a letter stating he's now officially a correctional officer trainee at the South Florida Reception Center. 5 months later, it was now 1996, and Ross would receive an award for completing 540 hours.
See, this is what happens when people go on record and try to lie. It's no reason to lie, man. You just got to be comfortable with who you are.
Of basic training. Ross was now an official corrections officer and can be seen taking a picture at his graduation ceremony. 4 months later, he'd receive a certificate of appreciation for perfect attendance from the same woman he can be seen shaking hands with at his ceremony. But eventually, all good things must come to an end. And in June of 1997, Ricky Rose sent in a resignation letter and officially left the force. But like I said, this isn't new news. This came out back in 2008, and 50 Cent started calling Ross Officer Ricky in 2009. That same year, Rick Ross would admit to XXL it was in fact him in the pictures. He'd state, "Me not answering or addressing that situation has nothing to do with my career. I've accomplished enough and I've made enough money for me to be good. Yes, it was me in those."
See, and that's what it's really about. When people speak, you can tell what their intentions are. His intentions was only about money and only about furthering his career so that he could create more wealth. Doesn't matter how he got there in his mind. That's why he couldn't tell the truth. That's why he couldn't stand on who he really is, because he didn't care for y'all knowing who he really is. He only cared for y'all seeing an image of who y'all wanted him to be. So, yeah, man, this industry shit be real deep. It's a lot of mental illness in this shit, to be honest. It's a lot of people that they don't got the morals. They don't got the morals. You can hear it in the songs. You can hear it in the music. You know, that's why you got people that's willing to make up a lifestyle in reality and try to stick to that shit. I can't understand what it would feel like to be walking around pretending to be somebody that you're not. Like, do you start believing that that's who you are?
Pictures, but I'm gonna tell you this. Me taking that job, I was doing my job. You understand what I mean? He'd continue on saying the stuff he talks about is real, the dope is real, and the gun talk is official. But fans would forever speculate, when exactly was Rick Ross in the streets serving bricks? In an interview with the Full Send podcast,
he wasn't. He just knew how to put himself next to people that was doing the real things. And if you got money and clout, some of those people that ain't got nothing going on, they're gonna let it rock. They're gonna let it rock, especially if they think they're gonna get something out of it. They look at it like, I done did more for less. For real.
Alleged Kingpin was asked about his time as a corrections officer in Florida State Prison.
You now obviously know the lie that Rick Ross told. He told them folks he was only there for 4 months, when in fact he was there for 18 months, if you look at the timeline, even receiving an award for perfect attendance. But that's the thing, right? I think Rick Ross is going above and beyond to try to stop this, because for some reason, man, he has this weird thing with his past as a correctional officer when I don't understand why. Bro, you were gainfully employed, right? You was not a police officer per se. Now you do have to swear to protect the Constitution. So you know, like, you are somewhat of an officer, but who cares?
And don't forget that he studied criminal justice. Same thing that police officers study. So it's real close.
Right? Like, who cares? Now, do I believe, like, the Rick Ross story of selling dope? I don't. Like, Rick Ross was in high school. He went to college, and then he started working as a correctional officer. At what point in between that time did Rick Ross have time to sell drugs? And then he became a famous rapper shortly afterwards. So, no, I don't buy, like, the drug dealing tale. And obviously, we now know that he stole the name from the real Kingpin Rick Ross. Right? That's just a fact. Yeah, but, like, Rick Ross feeling like he has to hide being a correctional officer, to me, is stupid. Only in our community would somebody feel like having a job like that where he's gainfully employed, he got benefits, he's making hella money. Only in our community will we feel like that right there is something to be ashamed of. I don't understand it, not one bit.
Yeah, I mean, people in our community is glorifying drug dealing. They glorifying pimping. They glorifying being a gangster, busting your gun. Like, that's what we glorify. That's what we look up to. You know what I mean? It's still that. It's been that for a long time. It needs to change. It definitely needs to change to the point where you rich and you can't come out and say what you really are. Talk about your real history. Like, that's sad. That's a mental illness. I think it's a mental illness that you can never live your life and tell your truth. Your real story, not the story you made up, I guess, to get rich.
No, especially because, like, if we don't have any type, like, okay, for example, right, bro, if Rick Ross don't have any type of snitching accusations in his past, if nobody has been accusing Rick Ross of telling on them, of putting them in prison, of putting them in jail, then why would being a correctional officer be something where it's like, yo, we are laughing at you, or it's something to be ashamed of? It's not. At all. There's a lot more things to be ashamed of than being a correctional officer. Trust the B.
Yeah, if you out there and you think you got to do some things to be accepted, you being made fun of, just remember that street life, that shit is real limited. And a lot of people that lived it and tried it, they didn't stay here forever. They either went to the ground or they went to the prison. So a lot of times it's better to be the square. It's better. You're going to get further in life. You're going to have financial success. You're probably going to do better with the women. You're going to be respected in the future. You might not be respected right now. You're just putting in work right now. People might be making fun of you, but people make fun of everybody. Everybody. Even the people that you think are cool, eventually they'll switch sides and they'll make fun of them as well. It's just the nature of how the world works. But it doesn't matter. You got to stay focused on your path. Stay focused on your path and know where you're going to. And understand it's not about today, because today is not the end. You just got to keep going.